All right, we are live today at the Surge Women in Politics panel. I am proud to be your host for the next 30 minutes or 45 minutes or however long we need to chat about this. I am Joanna Cattanach. I am the Democratic nominee for the state representative seat in House District 108, which is in Dallas. I am proud to serve as the moderator of today's panel with our panelists in order: Wendy Sachs, who is director and producer of today's film, Hannah Rosenzweig, who is also director and producer, and Jana Sanchez, a friend of mine, also a panelist and candidate. And we are all here today to talk about just the crazy and wonderful world of running for politics as a woman in 2020. As a reminder, if you're watching online, which all of us are, you can leave comments or questions in whatever chat form you're on, whether that's YouTube or Facebook streaming. We are going to be pulling questions from those streams into to the panelists so that we can answer them the best that we can. Will serve as a reminder as well. Also, Surge will be premiering on Showtime, and Hannah helped me with this a little bit, September 8th at 9 p.m. Is that Central Standard Time, or I forget which time zone we're in right there, at 9?
Eastern
On Showtime BET, a new collaboration with both Showtime and BET, which is kind of cool. A full film showing will be also at the Dallas International Film Festival, set for September the 26th, and hopefully we'll get more information soon about that schedule. But it'll be back in Dallas as well, and on Amazon and iTunes on October the 21st. So there are lots of ways to watch this film right before what will be one of the most historic elections of our lifetime. And that's awesome. And I love it. So I'm going to go ahead and let us get started. Again, we will be monitoring social media. If you have questions, please leave it in there. We're also asking the moderator to share that release information as well throughout our entire conversation. So let's get started. Hannah, I want to talk about just the film title. Surge. I mean, it's really a reflection on the number of women that really sort of ran for office in 2018. But what else can you tell us about, how you guys came up with that and what was really happening in that environment?
Absolutely. First, I just want to say hello to everyone, and we're so excited to be part of the Women Texas Film Festival. And we hope you take a look at our clips that are on our page at the festival. And thanks to all the festival organizers and to Joanna and Jana for joining us. So back in 2017, we noticed that everyone was, all these articles and in TV news, people were talking about the surge of women running. And we had been batting around titles, but we felt like having a single word title that really represented all of the energy that we were noticing, all of these women that were jumping into politics for the first time or running again for seats all over the country. So Surge really seemed to fit the film that we were making, because it's really about that, and of course the three candidates that we follow, but just this larger story of the surge. And now we're finding that in 2020, the surge has been used for many other things, and especially lately with the pandemic. But that's why we feel like it's even more important to use the title to describe the surge of women running, because it's continued. And it's, as we were talking about earlier, there are more women running in 2020 than ever before. So it's still surging. So we need to reclaim that title again and be, have it look at it from this positive angle. So that's the origins of Surge.
Well, that's great. And I can't help but point out, it was always interesting to me that 2018 was the year of the woman. And I always found it ironic that we got a whole year when really what I think we're on the verge of is just a surge of decades of women running for office at this point and holding office. So it sort of leads me to the next question, Wendy. How did you choose the women who you featured? And tell us a little bit about who they are, what they were running for, what states they were in, and how you all sort of came around to that decision.
Well, hi, also, thank you so much for inviting us to this amazing film festival. Thank you, Jana and Joanna, and we are so excited to be here. So thank you everyone for who's watching and listening at this virtual festival. We're sad that it's not happening in person, but so happy that we're here. We wanted to capture, going back to the surge of women running for office, but we were really interested in the women who are running for the very first time. These were women who hadn't necessarily ever considered that they would be running for office, like Jana Sanchez, one of our candidates who we followed and one of the panelists. They hadn't imagined that they'd actually be running for office. So we were looking to capture this idea that women were running for the very first time. And it was a very diverse group of women across the country, racially, ethnically, geographically, and as far as their own personal backgrounds. We wanted to tell the story of different types of women who are running in 2018. And so we cast a wide net, and it really is very much a casting process when you're looking to follow people's stories and see who's going to give you access and who's going to also, you know, part of making a documentary film, something like this, where there's literally a race and there's going to be winners and losers. You're really hoping to, you know, to hit yourself on a horse that's got some, you know, that has a chance, even if they don't make it to the finish line, that because there's a primary process, they make it to the primary and beyond. And fortunately, all of our candidates did. But we followed women, to your point of like, where were they? We followed 3 different women, Jana Sanchez in Texas, Liz Watson in Indiana, and Lauren Underwood in Illinois. And so we were really, you know, I think what we really captured is a truly sort of beautiful look at the types of women who are running in 2018. And they were very different in very different districts, but they were all looking to also flip their red districts to blue. That became another theme of the film. These were all women who were looking to oust the incumbent and also flip their district. So it was an uphill battle for all of our candidates.
Yeah, it was. And I think that's what makes it interesting is that when you're following a story about people running for office, you know the ending soon. I mean, there's no making that up. As a quick reminder, again, if you have any questions or if you want to know any information about when this film release is, you can submit that into the chats. They are sharing that information to us as well. So the next question is for Jana. Jana, you were a first-time candidate running for office. We met at that time, like a lot of those first-time candidates, and you really became a leader for women. What is it about female candidates that we need togetherness? You know, we need that collective.
So I don't know if it's true for all female candidates, but I think what bonded us together, there were like 30 of us in North Texas mainly, who supported each other's campaigns and helped each other really on a daily basis. And I think the thing that we all had in common is that we were first-time candidates. We didn't know what we were doing. We weren't the favored people of the party. You know, we didn't have the big organizations backing us, at least early on. And so we found each other in order for support, I felt. And we learned a lot from each other. And I don't know that women always run that way, but I think women are maybe a little more collaborative than men are generally. And I think none of us, or almost none of us, were experienced candidates. None of us were particularly ambitious other than just to win and fix what was wrong with our country and our state. So I think it was maybe something specific to that time.
Mm-hmm. You know, and some of it was just a practicality, knowing which vendor to choose, who not to choose, which guy to watch out for, and what, just taking care of each other's back, because it is a little, it's interesting to run for office. I mean, you learn a lot about people really quickly.
Yes.
And we had joked about earlier, Jana, there is no binder of how to run for office. There's no flipping to page 5 to figure out who to call for money. That's just not how this really works.
No. And also, and we talked about this a lot when we were running for the first time, there are lots of people who give you advice and expect you to follow it, but a lot of it is bad advice. And it's, I mean, I don't want to be stereotypical here, but a lot of it came from older men who were very generous with their advice. And it was very frustrating.
It was. I mean, there's a lot of advice out there.
Yes.
You sort of learn from each other what to take with a grain of salt. So the next question really sort of has to do with this environment that we are in. So this is for all of the panelists, and please feel free to chime in. We are in 2020. We are celebrating 100 years of suffrage. We have a completed ticket, and for the first time, Kamala Harris will be we have a female vice presidential candidate on the ticket as well. She is a historic first in a lot of reasons, but still the president is using the phrase nasty woman in particular, to talk about her. Talk about this moment that we are in American history. I mean, a lot of the viewers today have probably seen many of the documentaries that are talking about the suffrage movement, have an understanding of the difficulty of that movement even 100 years ago, when women were jailed, when women were beaten, when women stood outside of the White House and were ridiculed by the president then. We are 100 years later. We've made all of this progress. But still, I mean, I don't know if you have your nasty t-shirt, Jana, or not, or if we're going to get a new one this cycle. Now we have nasty woman masks. I mean, talk about that a little bit, Wendy, where we are in history still.
You know, maybe I'm too much of an optimist, but I do feel like we're in this very weird moment of time. We've definitely taken 10 steps back. I mean, there's no question about it. I was just listening to the Michelle Obama new podcast, and it's just tremendous for anyone who hasn't listened to it yet. And she does her first podcast with Barack, and they're talking about exactly this. What's happened, right? They had thought they had made so much progress. I mean, the 8 years of their time and their hard work. And by the way, they suffered the indignities also of nooses and all of this racism, and yet they sort of pushed through it all to be the best that they could be for America. And look at where we are right now. I believe that this time it's interesting. I think we are going to make so much more progress because of this really dark moment that we're in, this moment that is sort of magnifying all of the inequities of society, that's magnifying the racism, the sexism, the pervasive inequality that exists, and that people are saying enough is enough. So for so many years, for decades, people sat on the sidelines. I mean, there was always some activism happening out there, but for the most part, feminism sort of was very quiet for a few decades, and it has risen again. Right now, you have teenage girls posting feminist, quotes and everything on their Instagram accounts. I mean, we are in a very different era right now, and people are standing up to the racial injustice, and they're standing up to the sexism. So I think that nasty woman, I mean, great. Like, let's embrace that and grab onto it and motivate people to turn out to the polls in November, because we've had enough. Like, it's almost like humorous in sort of a dark way. And that 30% base that Donald Trump has, that is not going to change. That is his base, and those people are going to support him. If you shoot someone in the middle of Fifth Avenue, and if he calls every woman out there a nasty woman, they'll probably agree with that. But I think the rest of America has really woken up, and we're seeing this real transformation. One of the themes of Surge, and the question we ask throughout the film is this a moment or is it a movement? And, that was, and we sort of end on the note of it's sort of up to us to make that determination. And I think what we're seeing is it truly is a movement, and all of these sort of tropes that he puts out there, it's just enhancing the movement.
Yeah, I would say that too. I mean, I think it's a movement because Kamala Harris is the VP choice. I mean, look, it's amazing. She is the daughter of immigrants, the daughter of an Indian and a Jamaican. She was a single woman for most of her life until age 49. When she got married, she doesn't have kids. She's a stepmom. There's so many things about her that show that, here's this woman who has made it so far, and she has this incredible, very American story. So I really think that it shows that we have made an incredible amount of progress in 100 years. Of course, there are many, many, many things and many more things we need to do, and a long distance to go. Particularly, I think about, even though there are so many women still running, we still don't have equal representation in office. And there's so many offices that have never been held by a woman or a woman of color in this country. And we have that comes up in Surge quite a bit when you all get to see it.
Yeah. Jana, what do you think about that notion? Is this a moment or a movement? I mean, we're in Texas. It's like there's campaigning in the rest of the country, and then there's what happens
Yeah.
here.
Um, so I say this a lot, but winning begets winning. And what we saw in 2018 was candidates who worked in districts that were never worked before or hadn't been worked for 30 years. We saw women win. We saw women come extremely close to winning. And that has encouraged more people, either the same candidates, like in Joanna's case, to run again, or strong candidates, maybe stronger candidates in some of these districts have come in because they've seen how winnable it is. So for me, I think that it's definitely not stopping, it's only accelerating. So it must be a movement. And, you know, I think it's woken us all up to the danger of complacency. And I don't think that women are going to be complacent anymore. I think we're going to take our place in running for office and in leading the country. And I think, you know, we saw how fragile equal rights are with the election in 2016.
Mm-hmm. And, I find it interesting that what this has also really shown us, and especially in Texas and around the country, is how pervasive the effort has been to draw district lines that were unwinnable, voter suppression that has happened. What is happening with the United States Postal Service right now is just,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at this point, it's hard not to say that it's criminal. I mean,
Yes.
I don't even know how to, you see those trucks pulling away with boxes from the postal services or machines removed. You look at that and say, this is a democracy, right? Still, this is supposed to be a democracy here. So, these are the things that we've sort of looked at. The idea that for us in Texas, the Obamas came in and that administration came in and it was wonderful and great, but so much emphasis was put at a federal level and neglected at the state and local level. And in Texas, the Tea Party movement came in underneath that, funding and funding and funding, filling benches everywhere. Water boards were filled with Tea Party candidates. I mean, so they had so much to choose from. And that's, I mean, we've really learned some of that lessons, Jana.
Yeah.
But not to give it away, not to give the ending of this away a little bit, but there are winners and losers in every race. And one of the questions that you and I both get asked a lot, we did not win the first time. I came close within a recount. You did not win either, but you came close. You closed the gap in the district. How do you handle loss? And Wendy, if you could speak to that as well, about that dealing with the loss of an election and how it's sort of handled differently. How did you work through it with that, Jana?
So for me, I didn't feel like I lost. Okay, I'm not in Congress, so obviously on the most basic level, I lost, but I gained a hell of a lot. And also I created an atmosphere where other candidates, other Democrats can win within the district. So, I think that it's, I think that there's winning and then there's losing, and you can win some things and, not win everything. So I feel good about it. I didn't have any real grief over my loss. As soon as the campaign was over, I started calling my supporters throughout the district and throughout the country who helped me, a lot of them friends from other places. And everybody said to me, I hope you run again. You ran a great campaign. If you ever run again, I want to support you. And I felt like people came up and thanked me on the street as well. People, I would be at dinner and people would stop me and say, thank you so much for running. And that's how I feel. That's what I took away from it. And I'll definitely run again. I mean, it was physically and emotionally and financially very, very challenging to run. So I couldn't run this cycle, but I will run again.
That's great. And Wendy, one of the candidates that is featured in the film, she had a different experience with it a little bit. Talk a little bit about our discussion previously about how that sometimes loss is also grief.
Sure. And, I don't want to put words into her mouth because she's not here, but, I think one of the big issues and themes, and something we tried to address in the film, is about reframing this idea of failure or loss as that occurs in a campaign, because in a very female way, women don't like to put themselves out there and take risks if they feel that they're going to fail. We just don't. I mean, there's studies and studies. This is not my own personal opinion about this. I've actually wrote a book about being fearless. So I've spent some time in this space about this idea of taking risks. And nothing is more risky than running for elected office. I mean, you're just putting yourself into the public sphere and waiting to be ripped apart, right? And validated by money you raise and by how many votes you get. And so it is inherently personal. And I think that is one of the things that has held women back. We haven't been told to run. We haven't been tapped to run. We haven't been given the infrastructure to run or the encouragement to do so. And things are shifting. But with that said, you know, one of the themes that we explore is this idea that you may have to run more than once to be successful. And Wendy Davis is an expert in our film, and she speaks to that. She was a state senator, ran for governor, lost terribly, and is now actually running for Congress, as I'm sure everyone in Texas knows. But one of our candidates, Liz Watson in Indiana, she ran an amazing race in a district that was very, very tough to win. She raised a lot of money. And, you know, she shared with us afterward that she did take it. She felt responsible and very, she felt like she had let her people down. You know, she felt like she let everyone down around her, and she had a very hard time with that. And I think that inherently men don't feel the same way. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I think men are able to say, well, it wasn't the time, the district wasn't ready, I didn't raise enough money. If those people had just given me more money, if more people had endorsed me earlier on, I would have had a chance. They don't blame themselves. And women have a tendency to take full responsibility to good and bad. Right? We take ownership more so than men often do, but we internalize it. And I think it's hard to sometimes separate that sort of sense of failure and personal grief. And Joanna, I know you've had your own experience with this too. I mean, it's very personal. We are women. That is what makes us so collaborative and so great and so nurturing and such great leaders, because we work together. But with that, sometimes it's the emotional piece of it can be challenging. And we have to be able to also realize that, you know, the timing might not have been right. And maybe if the endorsements had come in earlier, like thinking a little bit more, separating it rather than taking any blame for, especially after you put everything in and you really ran a great race.
Yeah, you know, we, not winning is what nobody wants, but walking away knowing that I did everything I could was relief, frankly. And it's just to me, it hit home just what is sometimes always the biggest difficulty for any woman running for office. And that we look at the 10 things that are qualifications for running for office and we find we don't have one. And so we talk ourselves out of it. I can't tell you how many male candidates almost have no qualifications to run for office, and yet they still run. And so I think that I wish that more conversations could be had about what happens when you don't win. I know after our recount, I Googled every candidate who didn't win their first: Obama, Bill Clinton. I've said this, Nancy Pelosi was a real godsend for me a lot. I mean, I read a lot of what she wrote about and talks about and how she handles what is just an enormous amount of pressure at a national level. And hearing that helped, you know, me sort of deal with, you know, this feeling sometimes of inadequacy, that it was my fault that this didn't happen. And all of the encouragement that I received as well. And the number of men who told me, oh yeah, run again. No problem. I mean, you did all you could, girl. That was really great. So I want to bring in a question that came from the chat, and this is to Hannah and Wendy. And if Hannah, if you want to lead with this. So you sat down with a lot of women running for office. Obviously, what made you really settle on Jana, Liz, and Lauren to feature in this film? What about their stories that you felt like these were the ones you wanted to take forward?
Wendy mentioned it a little earlier. We wanted geographic diversity. We wanted a diversity, you know, it's interesting. We wanted some diversity in what issues were important in the campaigns. And Lauren was really very much focused on healthcare, and she's a nurse and with a public health background. And so that piece was very interesting to us. and Jana was such a great character we could see from the very beginning, and so willing to just share every part of the experience, which was really important. A lot of times, and any other filmmakers who have tried to make political films before know it can be really challenging to follow a candidate, because a lot of times they're trying to be really buttoned up and stay on message. So it's really important to find people that would share with us their journey. And, you know, as Wendy also said, we needed to find people that were likely going to win their primaries so that we could follow them to we always knew we were going all the way to the general in the film. So we needed to find people that, okay, they had a good chance of winning the primaries, and all three of ours obviously won their primary. And we wanted diversity in age and different parts of their story. Liz had 2 young children in running, and that was important. Following women, Jana didn't have children, which was very important. She had Jojo, a dog, that was important. And Lauren was young. Lauren, and who's now the youngest Black woman to ever serve in Congress. And that piece was also interesting. So it was just, so after kind of talking with, I would say, and we probably filmed with 6 or 7 and talked with maybe 12, then slowly we just sort of whittled it down to see who could really hold the film and take us through a wonderful story arc. And also, I will want to say that who we felt connected to. I think that's really important. We really liked all 3 women and wanted to spend time with them ourselves, and felt like we could. That there was a connection there, which I think is important when you're sharing this really intense time with someone, which is running for a campaign and also, you know, having a camera in your face for that amount of time. So.
Yeah. So Jana, I'm going to toss the next question to you. Obviously, in the film, people are going to see some of the difficulties an outsider candidate faces. We live in our districts, obviously, but you do come up against a wall when you run for office. If you are not, you know, recruited, if you are not really well personally financed. Talk a little bit about what it means to have support of the party versus being that outsider candidate a little bit. And I'm going to unmute you here. Sorry.
The party is very diverse. So if you're running locally, or if you're running for state house, or you're running for Congress, there are a lot of different organizations that make up the party. And none of those people asked most of us to run. Nobody asked me to run. And in fact, a lot of people said to me, why are you running? You know, I mean, I think there was a lot of that. So it's a long process to get the party on board. You know, some parts of the party were supportive. Most of it was not until the very end, when our race got put on the red to blue list. Or first we got Emily's list endorsement, and then we got put on red to blue. And there were some of the big DC PACs that endorsed us early. I'm not sure why exactly, but you know, I think you can gain their support even if you're not anointed to run. Because you're probably not going to be if you've got anything different about your background or about your message or anything. You're probably not going to be asked to run in a district. And these are tough races. So mostly you're probably going to have outsiders. At least in 2018, they were tough races. In 2020, a lot of them look very winnable. You know, so I think you have to accept that your job is to win those people over and get their support, unfortunately. And you know, at the end of the day, it does really matter how much support you get from the Democratic Party. And, you know, some parts of it are more Democratic with a small d than other parts of it. You know, I have nothing but praise for the Texas Democratic Party. And, you know, my local, in my county, Ellis County Democratic Party was amazing. And, you know, elsewhere, organizations were neutral to extremely supportive. At the end, when we looked like we were gaining momentum. But, you know, I think you just have to accept that you're probably not going to be asked to run, and you just do it anyway. And then you just do all the stuff that you have to do, like raise money and, you know, win support, win endorsements. And when you do that, I mean, success is, you know, the best thing that you can do is win, and you can win even if you aren't the person with support of the party initially.
Yeah, so we know that the Democratic National Convention is this week. Texas is in play. I mean, this is a discussion that, for if you've lived in Texas, it's been a discussion for decades, but there is a real chance of Texas flipping. For those of us who hear, we say it's more than a chance, but still Texans really aren't featured at a very high national level, even at that convention. I believe that there are two now, Representative Niave and now U.S. Representative Colin Allred will be a speaker at the convention. But for those of us who are here in this massive state, Texas has been a piggy bank for campaigns nationally for years. And is this, Jana, a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy that's going to happen nationally? I mean, I don't want it to happen, but
well,
it feels like it.
I mean, all the polling looks like Biden is neck and neck with Trump in Texas, and who would have thought that, 4 years ago, that you couldn't imagine that. And, of course, Beto had huge success and got very close and, we flipped a lot of districts. But yes, if the national party and the national leaders would take Texas more seriously, we would do even better. But, I, on the other hand, understand why they don't, because they don't need Texas. I mean, they don't have to. Texas, any Democrat can win without Texas. And in fact, it's like number 10 down the list of states you have to win to win. And although it's also true that Trump cannot win without Texas, Republicans cannot win without Texas. So, I understand not prioritizing it on a national basis, but we do need to flip the state house. And we have a lot of very flippable districts, including especially number 1 is Joanna's district. And so I think whether or not nationally Texas is seen as in play, we have to flip the state house. And that's probably where all the money should be going this year, is to the state house, to flip the state house so we can draw fair lines. And so I don't really mind if they don't take Texas seriously on a national level, as long as we flip the state house.
Anna, that's so interesting. So you would recommend people give to state house candidates?
Absolutely. There's no bigger priority this year than flipping the state house. There are, Joanna can correct me if the number is wrong, but there are 15 or 16 districts that are very flippable. Joanna's is the most flippable of the top number. And, I think that all of my focus this cycle has pretty much been on flipping the state house. We have 5 flippable state house seats in Tarrant County, all with excellent candidates who are raising money and working very hard. But we only need 9. If we win 9 seats, we flip the state house, and we get a seat at the table in redistricting, which is heavily gerrymandered in Texas and has been for a long time. So it's just super important that we help those candidates who won last time, like Michelle Beckley, who was part of our group of Women on Fire, and who probably nobody thought was going to win. She won. So we need to make sure that we hold on to those seats. And then the next priority needs to be making sure Joanna, and there are a couple other women from our group, in fact, Brandy Chambers, who was in our group, and very, very flippable seats. And then, of course, the 5 in Tarrant County. And there we're almost all the way to what we need to win, just in North Texas alone. And there's some very flippable seats near Houston as well.
Yeah, there are. So this is a question, and we're getting ready to wrap up here. To Hannah and Wendy, you followed women campaigning. And you followed in the good, the bad, and the tearful moments of all of that. What were some of the things that were takeaways for you as you watched sort of the internal mechanics of a campaign and watching women go through it for the first time? What were the takeaways for you?
I was surprised by the lack of support for Jana. I mean, I have to say I didn't, and I come from politics too. I had worked on Capitol Hill. I've worked on campaigns. I'm pretty, above average fluent in the way that political elections, go down. And I was really shocked by not just the lack of support, but that the DCCC was at one point working actively against her. And it didn't make any sense to me. So this idea that, yes, on its face, let's not put energy into districts that we can't win sort of makes some sense given there's limited resources and all of this, but to sort of actively be working against your candidates and especially working against women, especially working against women looking to like, flip a seat that's been held for, decades by the Republicans. And then, she gets the endorsement of the Dallas Morning News, which had not been done in 30 plus years to endorse a Democrat. I was sort of astounded by those challenges. And so on the one hand, I was in total awe and had such deep respect for what Jana was doing and how scrappy she had to be in her campaign. And then was really disillusioned by what was happening at the national level to hold her back. It felt very unfair. And it felt like she just kept getting more obstacles and she would like push them away and get through it. But that was eye-opening. And that's why we also wanted to include it in the film. It's a very real struggle and let's not sugarcoat it.
Yeah, I would say that is the thing that every single person mentions after seeing the film is why didn't the DCCC support Jana? Why didn't the Democratic Party support her? And to the point where a friend of mine who I screened it for about a month ago was so upset. She kept saying she couldn't talk about anything else after that. She's like, I love the film. It's fantastic. But why didn't the Democratic Party support Jana? I don't understand it. And, she wanted us to do a whole add-on about, explaining that more because it is hard to understand. So maybe that'll be our next film.
I wanted to also add that Emily's List. That was the other piece that I did not understand. I mean, I've always supported Emily's List, and here they weren't supporting Jana for a very, very long time. And this also idea that it's like this good housekeeping seal of approval and they pick their people and then it's done. And to most other, voters out there or the electorate or women who want to support women, they look at those Emily's List candidates and they think, oh, well, she must be good because Emily's List tells me she's good. Therefore, I'll give money. And if this one, Jana, maybe Jana doesn't support, maybe she's pro-life and not pro-choice. You don't know. Most people don't spend that much time digging, right? So that to me was like, well, why don't they help out more women? I don't understand this. What's happening here? This also seems like tragically unfair to me.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, it's a big,
I'm very upset about it.
It's a great thing. It's a great discussion piece and really important to talk about.
Oh yeah, we could talk for days about that.
Yeah, but I also just want to say that in all of our races, we shared this earlier with you, Joanna, we were in awe of all of our candidates. They ran incredible campaigns. They put every ounce of themselves into it. And really built grassroots movements. We talk about that in the film, and it is so true. These are movements, and that they've gone ahead to do incredible work, even the ones that have lost. They've, Jana and Liz are fighting the good fight. They stayed in, they didn't exit out of politics. They're doing other things. So there's a really hopeful message at the end of the film. So we hope everyone watches our premiere September 8th. Yay!
We want that to happen, and I'm going to end on a high note. There's a few questions that came in through the chat, so I'm sort of going to put them together in what is sort of a larger question, and that has to go with what the influence is in these races. I mean, you all mentioned the DCCC. Is there a concentrated effort maybe to not only that self-fulfilling prophecy, are the actively trying to get in your way, but the passively not investing enough? So Jana, I'm gonna let you and I sort of end with this, and with an open-ended question, but really a hopeful one. I hope that on November 3rd, what I'd like to see is victory, of course, but I truly hope that it is a message to donors in the state of Texas and to voters in the state of Texas and to outside organizations within the Beltway in Washington, D.C. that please understand investing in races because you believe in these candidates really does matter. It goes a long way. Investing in women goes further, in my opinion. I have yet to meet a female candidate that isn't extremely active in her budgeting. We know down to the dime where money goes in campaigns. Yeah. And state house races in Texas, it is literally more bang for your buck to invest in a state house candidate at any level, really, because our races are smaller. and our budgets are slightly smaller, although in Texas there's no fundraising laws. But Jana, what is your great hope on November 3rd? What do you want to be? Because we all remember where we were 4 years, looking for every bottle of alcohol you had left in your house.
Well, obviously, I speak for everyone when we say we want this national nightmare to end. The last gasp of white nationalism hopefully will be over. That's very, very important, I think, for most sane people today. But I also think that I hope and I believe that everything that we did and that you are doing now is working towards making Texas more competitive. Obviously, flipping the state house will be a tremendous benefit towards making it more competitive, and that affects everything from school funding to healthcare, to equal access or access to abortion for women or to reproductive choice. There are so many issues that can be affected by electing Democrats. And so I think it's very important that we flip everything on November 3rd. I believe very strongly that we probably will flip Texas. We will flip the state house. And if we don't flip it, if we don't flip the state as a whole, we will come so incredibly close that from now on, we will be a swing state. Before we become a solidly Democratic state. So I have a lot of optimism for November 3rd. I'm still nervous. It's been 4 years of a complete and total nightmare. But I think we're going to do it. And I feel really confident in how far we've come in 4 years.
Yeah, I do too. And that is it for us today. I just know that Wendy, Hannah, and Jana, we will find the first Zoom to jump on to celebrate because we will not still be in person. Surge will premiere. Again, Surge will be premiering on Showtime September 8th. It will be on Showtime's new channel, Showtime BET, a collaboration of both Showtime and BET. It will be back in Dallas at the Dallas International Film Festival on September the 26th and on Amazon and iTunes on October the 21st. Please follow Hannah and Wendy and Jana and I on social media, all of our social media channels. Tell your friends about this, but please, please, please remind them to support women who are running for office locally, nationally. Look at how hard they're working. Look at who has endorsed them and look who's not. And sometimes that matters too. But most importantly, for goodness sake, I don't care how you do it. Put a plastic bag around yourself, but please go vote. Please do not neglect to do that. And watch the film Surge. We are so glad that you joined our panel discussion today from afar, wherever you are. And good Lord Winnow and the creek don't rise, as we say in Texas. We will be back at the 6th annual Women's Texas Film Festival in person next year. All right. Well, thank you all so much, and we appreciate you.
Thank you, Joanna.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.